And good evening and welcome to this special Click to Houston webcast as we get underway here talking about all the issues that you need to find out about this special primary decision 2018. Have a couple of special guests with me this evening to go through for the next several hours as we look at the primary election results here in the state of Texas. I'm Campbell Marshall, and with me here is Jerry Bernberg, who is the former chair of the Harris County Democratic Party, and then Gary Pollard, who is the former chair of the Harris County Republican Party. Now, were you at the same time in opposite?
Maybe the last 6 months or something like that, as a matter of fact. No, you got the two old timers here.
You're
right.
The elder statesman of the two? He
is. Yeah. He's the more handsome too.
I thought it would be great to ask you guys, because I know that even though you are not officially party heads in your account in the Harris and in the Democrat and Republican parties, you're still very active, still very involved. I know you have your conservative review that you deal with, and you were at the polls, you were at the headquarters today. Actually,
I'm the general counsel still for the Harris County Democratic Party and the chair of the primary committee. So I'm been heavily involved ever since, really since September in this primary election.
We're going what year?
Yeah, correct. You're right. That's what I want.
This whole process, you've been a couple of chairs removed since you were the party chair, correct?
I was chairman from 1996 to 2002, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
I started 2003 to 2011.
One of the things that's been talked about both locally and nationally is that Democrats have this sense of, maybe we're going to have a chance to actually knock some Republicans off. Is that just wishful thinking, do you think, at this point?
So, first off, we should not read too much into the turnout results in Texas. There is very little correlation between primary turnout results and what's going to happen ultimately in the general election. A lot of reasons for that. We have many more races on the Democratic side than the Republicans do, because they have more incumbents in this election cycle. That said, there is undoubtedly some noticeable enthusiasm amongst Democrats, and if it holds until November, and frankly that's a big if, then I think we could see some things. Now, whether that's enough to take the state, I think that's a very open question.
What do most Republicans think about that in terms of the chances for Democrats?
Well, I think that the Democrats are energized. If you remember, Cambrell, when Barack Obama got elected president, the Republicans got energized. There was the Tea Parties came out and became a big deal, and people were really excited and agitated. And I think the Democrats have seized on Donald Trump and are using that to get their base excited. So is it possible that the Democrats will have breakthroughs in November? It sure is. It sure is possible. I mean, right now the enthusiasm is with the Democrats and not with Republicans. Now, again, it's the primary. We don't have major contested races except for Congressional District 2. But beyond that, we'll have to see. Yeah, and then 134, that's a small district. So there's 6,000 early votes cast. So it's like, that's not a lot of people. So that's the question. Will the Republicans be able to get their voters excited going into November? Now, the Democrats' problem they've got statewide is, I think they have an energetic candidate for the U.S. Senate. And I think he's worked really hard. He's gone all over the state. And I think Ted Cruz has got his work cut out for him. It's his race to lose.
So does Ken Paxton. I think we've got an interesting candidate running for Attorney General on the Democratic side as well. But I do think it's also very important for us to decide whether we're asking this question nationally, statewide, or Harris County. And my sense is that Harris County is in the 2018 cycle has much more opportunity for the Democrats than we've had in a gubernatorial cycle in a long
Well, that's
time.
after the general election, and just a couple of years ago, Harris County was blue, and so was Fort Bend County in that regard. So that was kind of, not
that was
maybe
presidential. That was a presidential.
Right, which is a little bit different than the midterms, but perhaps that was an indicator that there was going to be a little bit more enthusiasm going forward.
And a little is not, look, when Barack Obama carried Harris County in 2008, and that was the first time a Democrat had carried Harris County since Lyndon Johnson did it in 1964, he won by 16,000 votes. He carried the county by 16,000 votes. And by the way, that was enough for us virtually to sweep all of the down ballot races in Harris County.
Because of straight ticket voting.
for whatever reason. In 2000, I mean, that's, well,
You
no.
buy it, die by it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, because Adrian Garcia much exceeded Barack Obama, and several other races did as well. That said, the point I wanted to make is in 2012, Barack Obama carried Harris County by 1,000 votes. In 2016, Hillary Clinton carried Harris County by 163,000 votes. So we've got a heck of a wind at our back right now. And while it is undoubtedly the case that off-cycle or off-year elections are more challenging for Democrats. Look, you mentioned the Obama case and of course the Trump factor now. Don't forget 2006 when George Bush was in office, and in fact Harris County got 48.5% Democratic vote at that point in time. The rule is this: the party with the president in office is going to have a real uphill battle in Harris County, and that's what history tells us, and even in gubernatorial cycles.
One thing that seems pretty certain, when you have a governor's race that's like it is right now, the governor doesn't seem to be in any problems at all. I mean, his war chest is significant. The numbers now, I mean, in terms, this is not really a shock, 90% to 9% as far as the governor is concerned. Then the other side of the coin, there is a big group of folk who are running for the chance to run against Governor Abbott, and so that's part of the process too. And the early votes indicate that Lupe Valdez is 47%, Andrew White with 26%. There are many more others who are trying to at least make a runoff at this point in time.
Yeah, that's statewide races. That's not Harris County. Andrew White is doing very well in Harris County right now, and also that's only the early vote.
Right.
That's not anything counted.
Correct.
But I expect that's going to be that's the runoff.
I think it's very likely there will be a runoff, and it will be between those two.
To what end, though, in November? I mean, it's just going to be one of those kind of scenarios
How
where
big the defeat will be.
Yeah, well.
Oh, you're going into November?
Sure.
There's still a whole lot of things that have to transpire. But I think it is a very challenging, to be polite about it, a very challenging race for a Democrat to win the governor's race statewide.
Right.
That said, I think Harris County is really my focus, and it would not surprise me at all to see the Democrat carry Harris County in the governor's race.
Well, Andrew White.
That's who the Democrat is.
Correct, I agree.
Andrew White he's here in Harris County. Our Brandon Walker is at the headquarters there. He's got Andrew White standing by to get an update from him on how he feels about this early so far in this election cycle. Brandon?
And Cambrell, as you all have been discussing the results and the road ahead for whoever wins today's primary election for the Democratic Party, we spoke to Mr. Wright about that now, and he's joining us again, sir. Thanks for continuing to do these live updates. So we're looking at the numbers coming in from Harris County. They look good. That's expected. What are you hopeful for, and what are you looking toward as far as the rest of the state goes? What are some of the challenges?
Sure. Well, the big cities obviously are going to be important to us. Harris County even more so, because it's my hometown, and we're going to have a great response. The numbers are just coming in early, right? So we don't know where they're going to end up, but we're encouraged. We're excited about where we're at, and the fact is we thought there'd be a runoff here, and there probably is going to be a runoff.
And someone who knows politics well, of course, the son of the late governor, Mark White, the last Democrat to hold governor here in the state of Texas. I'm curious your take on how the Democratic Party has changed in a Texas context since your father held the top job.
Sure. Well, Ann Richards was actually the last Democratic governor.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. And it changed. The Democratic Party for 24 years hasn't held statewide office, and that's a long time. We don't have the bench strength that we used to have, right? We don't have the donor system that we used to have, but we do have the voters, and the voters ultimately get their say. And they're having their say. They showed up. In early vote, we doubled the vote from 2014 to this year. So what we're seeing is people are responding to the extremism from Donald Trump, the extremism from Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick, and they're angry. And ultimately, we believe angry people will vote.
What's the likelihood, you think, though, that momentum will stay there coming from the primaries and the early voting results to the general election?
Well, the first stop for us will be the runoff in May. And so getting a turnout in the runoff is critical. And we believe that these important congressional district races, there's going to be a lot of runoffs in them as well. And so their turnout is going to be our turnout. And there's going to be turnout coming from races in Houston, races in Dallas, races in perhaps in Beto's district in El Paso and other places. So we could see a lot of runoffs in May.
And it seems as though, at least as far as the numbers go, if there is a runoff election, it's looking like that will be the person that you will face off against would be Miss Lupe Valdez out of Dallas, the former sheriff of Dallas County. What's the difference in your platform?
Well, you know, I don't know a lot about her platform. Her website only has a few positions on it, and she doesn't speak a lot about her policies. I do know this. We've got a very extensive platform at andrewwhite.com on a lot of issues. We've received the endorsement from every major newspaper in the state, which to me says the papers believe that I understand policy, and that I can argue policy with Greg Abbott. And so that's going to be a critical issue that Democratic voters are going to ask themselves when they vote in the runoff. Who can beat Greg Abbott?
And as far as that goes, in the coverage, at least in terms of the policy differences between you and Governor Abbott of late, has been focused on gun control, of course, following the shooting, the school shooting in Florida, and other questions about what the law could potentially do as far as gun control goes. But on your platform, you also discuss education and the system that's in place right now, the Robin Hood system, where now HISD is no longer on the receiving end of that. But we're also seeing here in Houston, with the Houston Independent School District, a $100 million budget shortfall. As governor, what needs to be done to change how our schools are financed?
Sure. The state used to fund 50% of K through 12 education. Today they fund 38%. That difference has been on the backs of our county, and that's our property tax bill, right? And so the state has to get back into the education business. Governor Abbott spends $800 million a year on border security, and border security is a federal issue, not a state issue. We need to focus on what the state should be focused on: education, healthcare, criminal justice, and take that money and put it into education. So we have to get back into the education business, and I mean the public education business, not private school vouchers, which is what they also want.
And also, we've got a full update on where your stances are on the issues on our website, click2houston.com, also on your website as well. Just want to ask you, we talked about this at 6, just the turnout and what the voters were saying. During this live webcast at 7, what have you seen today? What has the message been?
Sure. I mean, people obviously are upset with Governor Abbott and Dan Patrick, right? They're upset with the extremism. They want someone to focus on the bread and butter of government: education, healthcare, criminal justice, and they want someone to fix our property tax system. And Greg Abbott's solution to property taxes: just put a 2.5% cap on it. That doesn't work. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a heart attack victim, right? You got to fix the underlying problems. And so my message of bringing sanity and reason back to state government, rolling up your sleeves and doing the job of a governor, that's what I'm talking about. And voters have been responding to it.
Crowded field, 9 Democrats. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, you know what? I'm excited. I know all these candidates. They're great people. They have a heart for the state, and they're doing what they should be doing. They're stepping up and trying to change the state. And so I'm excited that it looks like we'll get through to a runoff and be able to continue to talk about our message.
All right, we'll keep checking in with you throughout the night, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, Cambrell, we're going to send things back to you, but as you can see, Mr. White there outlining what he says will be the plan moving ahead. Again, as the numbers do indicate, it does seem as though there will be a runoff election for the Democratic ticket looking into the gubernatorial general election in November, and likely, as those numbers are looking right now, he will face off, Mr. White, that is, with Lupe Valdez out of Dallas, the former sheriff of Dallas County. So we're going to continue to monitor the numbers, also the results here in the mood from this campaign, and bring you more updates throughout the night. Let's send things back to you.
All right, thank you, Brandon. Of course, all of this is setting things up for November. I mean, it's just one of those things. We're looking at it. A lot of people. I'm excited about this time of the year. I'm just a patriot. I love it when we go out and we vote. I was out at the supermarket today and all the signs out. I just love the energy of people who are supporting candidates because of what this democracy is for us.
And that's really important.
It is important. Is there
More people should vote.
More people should vote. More people should and embrace this. And there should be. Is there anything that you think is going on now that would make people's vote not count? Because right now on our national stage, we know about a lot of influence and a lot of things that are going on nationally from outside of this country impacting our vote, or possibly impacting our vote, messing with our democracy in some way. But we haven't seen a lot of things going on about it. You still have a lot of confidence that everything is happening as it should?
I think generally speaking, the elections are fairly run.
You know, I think generally speaking, the elections have been fairly run. I do think that it is very problematic that we aren't doing anything to counter the Russian interference with our democracy, and I think that is at best a very scary proposition. It does need to be dealt with. Locally, let me tell you what my concerns are locally.
Because you are general counsel, you follow all these things, and you were at the headquarters today from 6:30 this morning until you came over here watching all of this.
Yes, and so, but here's what I have concerns about. One of them is our polling equipment in Harris County, our voting machines, were purchased in 2000. They have a useful life of 10 years. They should have been gotten rid of and replaced in 2010. What happened, you might recall, in 2010 is we had the fire over at Canino Road. It burned up a bunch of the machines, and the county took the insurance money and bought more used machines of the same kind instead of investing that in new machines and new technology. And so what we've seen happen is those machines are less reliable than I wish they were. Now, whether they are hackable or not, I'm more sanguine about that. But in terms of the batteries go out, the machines don't come up, and whether they are accurately reflecting people's votes is troublesome to me. Now, I'm not, don't get me wrong, folks. I'm not trying to say your vote got miscounted or your vote didn't count. I'm saying, however, it is an area that we have sufficient factually grounded information about that we really ought to be doing something about.
We should invest in new machines, new technology.
Actually, I do think we should be, and I would think that we need a voter verifiable paper audit trail.
You mean like after you finish, you can print out who you voted for?
Yeah, like, by the way, President Trump is calling for in the last 2 days. All right, paper ballots. All right,
progress is being made, perhaps.
Yeah, well,
go back to paper ballots.
I'm not.
Oh no, there was a lot of cheating with paper ballots. Oh my God!
They
would stuff the ballot. You know those late boxes that would come in, and you'd have a candidate who was behind, and suddenly they'd have just enough votes they need to win.
Talking 1948 in Duval County.
Okay, that's right. That's how Lyndon Johnson got elected to the U.S. Senate.
Let's talk about Congressman Culberson's seat,
It's not Culberson's seat.
Well,
it's the people's seat.
Okay, it's George Bush's seat.
We're going to start
Bill Archer's seat. It has been Culberson's seat.
It has been the seat that Congressman Culberson is holding right now. It clearly, on the national stage, that's one of the seats that nationally the Democratic Party said, if we can get that seat, because in that district, Hillary Clinton won by just a small amount, but she still won.
And Culberson won too, though. Remember that?
Yes, he did, and she won that. So now the goal is to try to do what they can. He doesn't have. There's no really contest. He's going to be running against a field. Now that's where it gets interesting. What do you think is happening now in that makeup in the field? Laura Mosier was a candidate, one of the candidates. The Democratic Party has come out against her.
Not the Democratic Party.
Not the Democratic Party. The DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Committee.
That was basically here's the inside story that I understand. Emily's List decided early on they liked Lizzie. So they're going to support her. And one of the honchos at Emily's List went over to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and she carried with that the agenda that they wanted to have Lizzie be the candidate. And so they put out there, Laura Mosier being the biggest threat to her, they put out that she's too liberal for the district. I mean, let me tell you, I can't see any daylight between Laura Mosier and Lizzie in terms of their positions. They're both militantly pro-choice, militantly anti-Trump, anti-Republican, and the whole leftist agenda. They embrace it, both of them. So what it did do, I believe, it helped Laura significantly because it raised her from the field. They said, oh, well, she's too liberal. Look, the Democratic base is liberal. So they said, well, that's who we should support. So she gets a boost, and early voting-wise, she's headed to a runoff.
So look at she right now, it certainly looks that way, and that would not have been the case, I don't believe, before the DCCC.
Maybe they did that on purpose.
I don't know about that. And it turns out that Lizzie's
as you're getting that Daniel Brown's in our control, Daniel's our producer, whatever, pull those numbers up when you're talking about that, and you can pull up Congress 7.
Yes, but the truth of the matter is we've got at least there are a total of 7 candidates. At least 5 of them are viable candidates for the November election.
That is true.
They spent a bunch of money. And all 5 of them have a chink in the armor that Congressmember Culberson will be able to play off of.
Which is?
Well, okay, so Lizzie Fletcher, who is a terrific candidate and who has the support of Emily's List and the pro-choice folks.
She was very active in Planned Parenthood.
And in CD7, that may not be the signature issue that you want to run on. In addition to that, her law firm of which she's a partner, was involved in a lawsuit against the janitors union that essentially puts the janitors union out of business. And as a result of that, labor has been actively going against her. Organized labor doesn't like her, which is not good for a Democratic candidate. Laura Mosier, by the way, you're talking about her progressive bona fide. So her husband was Barack Obama's official videographer during the 2008 campaign. After the campaign, he had a position in the White House, and he worked in the White House for several years. He, by the way, Gary, is the individual who introduced the Passover Seder to the White House.
That's right.
He's the one that got
that President Obama did attend.
Correct. All right. And then he left the White House to go start fundraising, a fundraising entity, which became the chief fundraiser for Bernie Sanders. Now, meanwhile, Laura, as a stay-home at home
but had
mom,
been an activist, to be fair, and a writer.
What she did, though, was she formed some sort of an organization, a Daily Action Network or something like that, that if you sign up for her list, every day you get a text message from her first thing in the morning that tells you, today you're to call this Congress member, here's the phone number, and here's what you're supposed to talk about. And her list is over 300,000 strong, and it's supported by people like Sarah Silverman, Susan Sarandon. So she's got some
network.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's a progressive network,
right.
And again, is that the proper place to be for CD7?
Well, we get this big story about the blue wave, and they look at that as one of the examples of blue wave. From what you've just mentioned to me, doesn't sound like it's the right recipe for a wave in that district based upon aggressive bona fides.
Go ahead. My take on this district is this district could be taken by a Democrat that would be like a Gene Green type, okay, who's thought of as a moderate. Sounds
like Weston.
Blue dog, a blue dog Democrat. I mean, he wasn't, but he voted with them a lot and could work with the other side, that kind of thing. Because Gene did, and he actually accomplished a lot in Congress. He had a very distinguished career. But he's the kind of candidate that's going to be left. But what the Democratic primary voters are going to pick, remember what happens in your primary, you get more ideological voters.
Right.
You have a lot of voters that stay home, right? And so we're going to end up with probably, with clearly a liberal candidate, maybe the most liberal candidate, and that is something Culberson can exploit if he runs a smart campaign. You know, if you're stupid, you say dumb things.
That's a big if.
Well, you're hoping that he's learned something over the years.
I'm not.
Then he can win, but if he runs a stupid campaign, it may not matter. You know, you say dumb things, you lose. Remember Governor Clayton Williams? You remember him? He was going to be governor, beating Ann Richards until he said the things he said about race.
So the candidate you just described, Gary, is probably Jason Weston, the doctor, the cancer researcher from the medical center.
Very impressive
And he
background.
turns out to be extremely impressive. And what does he use for his signature issue? He uses the single-payer insurance and Medicare for all, which I happen to agree with. Most Democrats happen to agree with.
I don't know that the
How does that work in CD7?
Not gonna work.
Well, early on, he's not very far behind Laura Mosier, so somebody who hasn't had all the cred of that. Now, that's only with 1%. This is early voting numbers. We still have to get a lot more information to really get a sense of how that's shaping up.
Yeah, he's 500 votes behind. So he's not out of it.
So,
not at all.
But once whoever wins, do you still think Culberson is vulnerable?
I actually do. I absolutely do. I think that the first of all, I think 2018 in Harris County and in CD7 is going to be a year of the woman. I think you can expect to see a great deal of voting strength, almost a great deal of anger. Laura's TV ads, I think, have been very effective when she talks about sending a mom to Congress, and so I think that it's going to favor a woman naturally in that district. I think also
was a man.
Well, I didn't. You did. I also
you agreed with me.
Well,
the most electable. Let's put it
I don't
that
know.
way.
Most matched for
that district.
For that district,
Okay,
I think
that
that's
means
correct.
most
But
electable.
not
This
This is what happens when you get two attorneys together, parsing the words.
Too far. Yeah.
Most electable.
All right, but the point is, all of these folks, I think, are going to give John Culberson the run of his life. I don't think that he's going to.
He cannot loaf.
Correct. I think they're all going to be.
Election.
They're going to be well financed. You're going to see the DCCC. Even if Laura Moser is the candidate, they're going to come in with real money in that one, because it's one of those 23, 24 that Hillary won.
There's no question they're going to spend.
And I think, by the way, I think that all of these candidates, and we didn't even mention Alice Triantafillis, are capable candidates to run a serious campaign against John Culberson in that district. Culberson's got some vulnerabilities. Prior to the last 60 days, he said, where has he been with regard to the flooding issues? And
he's working on it.
I said the last 60 days.
Yeah, well, better late than never.
Congressman Ted Poe.
A lot of people that didn't do much, to be fair. Don't just blame Culberson.
No,
our whole delegation was asleep at the switch.
How do you really feel, Gary? You shouldn't don't straddle the fence.
I mean, part of the we've discussed this before on the show, Cambrell. The problem was how they allocate money in Washington. It's dribbled out. So those projects that should have been funded years ago, we're getting a little bit of money every year, and we'll finish 5 years late. No big deal. Oh, wait a minute, it was a big deal. We had a once-in-a-lifetime flood.
We'll disagree about this one too, by the way, but one of the reasons for that was when we got rid of earmarks. If we still have the earmark system, there's a whole lot more likelihood that those issues would have been funded.
Maybe.
Ted Poe is calling it quits, a distinguished jurist and congressman now, but there is a serious scrum for that seat. Kathleen Wall has spent a lot of money.
Current estimate's over $7 million.
Yeah, of her own money.
Of her own money.
Yes. I was reading, and I don't know, I was reading that of the X number of $1 million, $10,000 had come outside, and the rest of it was her money.
Well, what happens?
Or her husband's
Look at
money.
these are the numbers that are up there now, the early numbers.
But when you self-finance to the extent she does, donors don't think they have to give you any money. I mean, you got to write a check for $7 million. You don't need my money, and that's what happened to Kathleen. She probably should have been out there raising money. That it would probably be better at the end of the day, especially if things don't work out. It's a whole lot of money for not much.
Yeah. On the Democratic side, I think Todd Litton is almost certainly going to be the candidate. I think that he would actually stack up better against Kathleen Wall in that district than against Kevin Roberts.
That's probably accurate. I think Roberts would be really tough to beat. Yeah, because he's run before. People know him. He's very likable. Kathleen is, look, she's been spending a whole lot of money. He's got, the advertisements. You watch KPRC, about one after another. It's like the same one repeating with Abbott and the like. So but is that going to get by her a victory tonight? Because she was trying to win without a runoff. That's not going to happen.
No.
And I never thought it would.
Well, certainly if it. Well, of course, these numbers aren't. The numbers that we have now.
But given the day turnout, these numbers are pretty important, Cambrell.
Yeah.
The day turnout was not overly impressive, especially for our side.
So what were the numbers that you?
I haven't seen the final
I haven't
numbers
seen
yet.
today's numbers, but when I talked to my sources in the county clerk's office, they said the turnout was.
You get the same.
I haven't talked. Yeah, I haven't.
A little better among Democrats.
I think it was better amongst the Democrats, but I don't think it was blowaway numbers for today.
A lot of people voted early.
Exactly.
Which raises an interesting question, and I was going to ask you this: do you think early voting basically prematurely ends the campaigns?
Well,
should we make people actually wait till the vote on election day?
No, because
make it easier to vote.
Amongst other things, because we don't know what the weather's going to be like on election day. We run into technical problems on election day.
Like today.
Yeah, like today. No, I think early voting we should rely on more. But it is correct, and you know this, one of the banes of people running the campaigns, what it means is that your message has got to have stuck 2 weeks earlier than it did before. You've got to have set whatever it is that you're going to set, and then you have to keep that sustained for a 2-week period of time.
So
it used to be Correct. So it
used to build to a crescendo of the
exactly. You would build up to a crescendo, and then election day would come, and that was really important for funding. Now you've got to have reached the crescendo 2 weeks early, and you still got to fund to maintain that for the next 2 weeks. It makes the elections much more expensive. It makes them much more difficult. But yeah, but I do also happen to believe that election day is more than a moderate indicator of who's going to end up prevailing. You have to really.
By the way, while we're talking, I want to make sure that you know that we do have the information on the screens as they are coming in now. Obviously, it's very early on. We're talking about 1% or so. So they're going to be on the bottom of the screen at all times. And we'll be talking about all of these as well throughout the evening. And we'll get certain areas and we'll talk about them specifically. But for your interest, we have them scrolling under the bottom of the screen at all times. I do want to follow up what we're talking about with Kathleen Wall. We saw these commercials almost 24/7 with Governor Abbott, with Kathleen Wall. We also have seen Governor Abbott come out very publicly against Sarah Davis, who is also somebody who's an incumbent. And that seems to me, that's very unusual. It has been. And this is his way, apparently, of saying, okay, during the period of time when we were in a legislative session, you weren't in lockstep with me, and therefore we need to replace you with somebody who may be in lockstep with me.
Well,
am I wrong on that?
Actually, I do think I think the governor.
Right.
Well, sort of.
I think
the governor.
Always right, or you're not coming back.
That's cool. My wife.
No, you can come back. You can.
My wife's going to be very unhappy about that.
Always have an invitation.
Okay, so here's what I do think is the message that the governor is sending in. I think it's not just that he endorsed her, but when you see all of the ads for her, you notice at the bottom where it says paid political advertising, it's paid political advertising paid for by Greg Abbott campaign. Right. Those ads haven't even been paid for by Suzanne.
This was an election. I mean, what happened? She opposed the governor on a couple of issues.
Sarah Davis,
and also was a big pusher on ethics legislation that said if you donate to the governor, you can't be appointed. So he didn't like that either. So this was personal. I mean, and the other thing that's happened with Sarah is this, and this is an interesting story. Sarah has always been a moderate conservative. Okay, she votes.
Not always. In 2008, she was an Obama supporter.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, well, we'll forgive her for that. But she has voted. She votes with the caucus about 80% of the time. 20% doesn't. Always been pro-choice. That's her feelings. True. The Republican Party never called her out over that. Didn't give her a hard time. And I mean, in understanding the district's a little more moderate than other parts of the county. But what happened was Sarah went out of her way to antagonize conservatives. I mean, conservatives like Dan Patrick or Paul Betancourt or others, called him out, gave him a hard time. I never understood why, because they had never gone after her. They pretty much left her alone. Understanding the district.
How about the fact maybe she was in a district that said the bathroom bill is ridiculous, and
she wanted to oppose the bathroom bill. She can oppose the bathroom bill, but here's what she did. I believe she was making politics personal. So what happened in response is that Abbott and maybe Patrick and others decide, okay, we're going to be personal about you. And that's how this became this unbelievably expensive campaign. I live in the district. I tell you, Jerry.
I do too.
Okay, well, did you get the mail? You didn't get any mail.
Yeah, I did.
You got it anyway?
Yeah, I did too.
I guess you voted Republican once.
No.
Maybe you voted for me. Anyway.
I did get Kevin Brady money back in 1996.
Okay, but so what happened, we got, I mean, every day it was 2 or 3 mail pieces in this election. Every day. I mean, it's stacked up. It's unbelievable. And then they did some TV ads and other stuff.
But let me weigh in on my theory. My theory is that it's not quite as personal. That's the second priority. I believe that the reason that Governor Abbott took such an interest in this was to send a message not to Sarah Davis, but to the members of the Texas legislature, the House of Representatives, which now are not going to have Strauss as the Speaker of the House anymore. And I think what he's saying to them is, look, folks, you either do, in the House of Representatives, you either do what I say, or you can expect to face a bunch of money that I'm going to spend against you. Now, I may not win. Sarah may win. But you're going to have to go through a very ugly campaign. You're going to have to raise a bunch of money because I'm going to spend a bunch of money, and there's an easy out for you. All you have to do is what I tell you to do. I think he knows, he's enough of a bean counter to realize that the Democrats are not going to take the majority of the House of Representatives this time. Now, they may very well be able to control who becomes the Speaker.
Well, they did that before. That's
Absolutely.
not new. That's nothing new.
Exactly. So that's what it is that Greg Abbott is trying to forestall.
He wants a conservative Speaker.
He does.
Like that.
He wants to have control of that selection process, and the way he can do that is by sending a shot across the bow of all these other members of the House. And I think what he thinks is, look, okay, if Sarah wins, big deal. Meanwhile, I've sent my message to the others. And if she loses, I concede there's a good chance that the Democrat will win that seat. I don't care. I got enough numbers without it. I actually
think he likes Doug Capil worked for him. He likes her.
I think that he does at a personal level, but I'm suggesting that the strategic consideration,
she's actually a conservative policy wonk.
Sure,
Doug Capil. I mean, she'd be a good representative, not the picture that Sarah Davis has painted of her. Because some people that support her,
but it's been a very ugly campaign.
It has been.
From both sides.
Yes,
and you've gotten the mails at home to prove it, right?
And the TV ads have been nasty, you know. So what are you telling the other members of the legislature? You really want to put yourself through that? You know, I think that's what's going on there.
That's politics.
Jerry may be right, though I do think they like to.
Wait a minute. Let's keep the tape of that one.
She would like to. The governor would like to report.
This politics is messy, messy, messy. We've got Mario Diaz is one of our investigative reporters. He is involved in looking at what's going on around the state and looking at some of the activity that's happening. Some of these Republican races for us tonight. Mario, what's the latest from where you are? Where are you? And I know you were looking at some of the same things we were talking about earlier about the governor and how he's been weighing in with some of these candidates and whatnot. What's your take on what's going on from where you are as far as the Republican races are?
Okay, well, first off, I'm over here in Memorial City, Cambrell, and this is where Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is set to take the stage here as soon as this room begins to fill up a little bit more and his race becomes official. Currently, you're sitting at about 75% for the Lieutenant Governor, the incumbent. His opponent here in this primary, Scott Milder, a gentleman out of Dallas, small business owner there, trailing him at 24%. So this is a race that he's probably going to wrap up here very, very quickly tonight. Short night of work for him. He's been campaigning around the state here in the last about 3.5 weeks. He was up in Dallas, met with the vice president there. I was in San Antonio with the land commissioner, George P. Bush. So he's been out on the road. He's here in this area, of course. This is where his backing is, but he's back home tonight. He's going to be addressing this podium here. We anticipate probably within the next hour or so. Now, back to your original question here about the governor weighing into the other races that are out there. And there's no doubt Governor Abbott was swinging for the fences tonight to hit a grand slam. We knew that he had the home run in his race. This thing was done already with regards to his own challenge, but the other three races that were out there were very interesting because you had certain districts that the governor was investing his time to go in and campaign, not for the GOP incumbents, but for the GOP challengers. You had races involving Wayne Faircloth, the Republican incumbent out of Galveston, as well as Sarah Davis, the Republican incumbent here in Southwest Houston. Lyle Larson's a gentleman out of San Antonio. All of them Republicans, all of them already in office, all of them on a target list by the governor. And the reason here is simple. And talking to operatives, talking to other individuals, it's simple. The governor wanted to obviously get legislation that he wants to move with in the future. Doesn't want to have some of the challenges that he saw in 2017. 2019, he wants things to go more his way. But the question in all of this, Cambrell, this is going to be a talking point for you back there, is that did Governor Abbott tonight perhaps insert a wedge within the Republican Party because of the fact that, hey, if all of these other candidates, the incumbents, actually win tonight in the three races where he campaigned heavily against them, first off, what does that mean in terms of his clout moving forward? And separately in all this, are we going to actually see a moment here within the next week to 10 days? And this does happen in some of these primaries that are very heated, where both sides realize, listen, we're in it together. We may not like each other, but this time around, let's work together because it's in everyone's best interest. We still don't know what the results are from those 3 House races are thus far, so it's going to be interesting, Canberra, to see how this plays out moving forward.
All right, thank you, Mario. And that's a good question. We'll follow up here about whether or not it's a wedge issue. I mean, you said it's a matter of fact of the governor just sending a message saying this is where it's going to be. And I've noticed that over the last time that the legislature was in session, was that, it's always that there's wedges all over the place.
Well, yes, but I do believe that the Republican Party is more monolithic in the House of Representatives than, I don't see it as being really ideologically diverse amongst the Republican state legislators. I do think that Speaker Strauss had an impact, in part because he could rely on Democrats to support him. I think it's going to be interesting to see who the next speaker is going to be. I think that Governor Abbott's trying to select the speaker that he wants, and if he succeeds in that effort, then I don't think there's going to be any wedges. What do you think, Gary?
No, I don't think so. I think that depending on how the turnout and what happens in the election tonight, I mean, the Republican hope is to elect a conservative speaker and not have to have a speaker the Democrats picked. Strauss was a moderate Republican who the Democrats elected, essentially.
Right.
In fact, the Republican caucus voted this year to vote in the caucus to support his candidate for speaker, and they want to bind everyone in the caucus to vote that way. If that's the case, then the Republican caucus will pick the speaker, and it'll be more like it is in Washington.
Let's talk about the junior senator in the state of Texas. A lot now have been focused on the fact that his challenger, the ultimate challenger from the Democratic side, Beto O'Rourke, may be formidable at some point. Is that possible?
Formidable, yes, I'd use that adjective, and I'll tell you what else I do believe about that race in the fall. I think we'll see a lot of money from outside of Texas come into Texas in connection with that.
Because they don't like Cruz.
Right, correct. And my sense, and Gary, you're obviously much closer to the Republicans, but at least in Harris County, I don't think that Cruz has the ability to energize vote and turn it out, as opposed to people just staying at home and saying, he'll win without my vote. And I think that we will see some suppression, and I don't mean that in the pejorative sense of the term, of the Republican vote, just because it's, they don't like the fact that what Cruz did in the Republican convention, that he didn't ever endorse Donald Trump, and I think that may end up having the effect of him not being able to do a top of the ticket pull. And if the governor doesn't face formidable opposition, I think you'll see some of that same effect.
Yeah, and actually, and I think he's right. You want the governor to have formidable opposition, to feel like this is a real election, even though it may not turn out that way. So voters are motivated to turn out, and that Abbott is motivated to spend some of his $40 million, a significant portion of it, to make sure he wins and he brings the ticket with him.
I've noticed that outside of Harris County, a lot of the candidates who've been running have been running Trump, 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 making sure that as they appeal to their base, the Republican Party, if they appeal to their base, they are making sure that they're tied closer to Trump. I know that George P. Bush has been doing that. Those commercials have been happening
Bush
there.
And Kathleen Wall.
And Kathleen Wall has been doing that as well. Is that...
Well, that's
the primary,
right? Absolutely.
But also, and if you look at the national polls that we believe are reliable, Trump's popularity is up to about 50%, and then his negatives are about 48. It's within range of where President Obama was at about the same time. So the thing about President Trump is the only thing that's predictable is the unpredictability. There's some unpredictability there. There could be an off-the-wall tweet or comment that comes in late October, and it could blow up the election for Republicans. So if you embrace Trump to such an extent that I'm a Trump guy, and you love Trump, you love me, the Wall plea, that becomes dangerous.
And what are Democrats supposed to do about tariffs and
well, that's
TPP?
an interesting question. Now, that's a very interesting question because the Democratic,
like
the labor union,
well,
the labor unions really like tariffs, and the Wall Street doesn't. So, and the Democrats, they don't want to do anything that Trump likes. Trump is actually, for all the mishigas that you get from Donald Trump, he actually knows how to divide and conquer. He really does.
Well,
he did in the Republican Party, and he's done it to the Democrats.
So
the Democrats' problem, I believe, is this. They've gotten tied up into knots over everything this guy does when they should be focusing on the things that they really believe are really bad as opposed to everything. But the way it is now, whatever Trump does, he's horrible, it's the worst, terrible, we need to impeach him, blah, blah, blah. You know what happens? The voters tune out because that's all they hear. As opposed to when you have the silver bullet that is really is bad news. If he does, they may not listen.
On the other hand,
pride wolf. That's the Democratic Party.
On the other hand, when you look at November, I think that Trump will be a factor which will weigh against the Republicans and energize the Democrats precisely because of the effect that you just described. There are a lot of Democrats. I'll bet that by this time next week, we're going to have Democrats standing in line ready to vote in November. You know, just
no, I'm not worried that the Democrats won't be enthusiastic in November. I mean, my concern is that the Republicans aren't, and the Republican Party's main job is to get their voters enthusiastic to come to the polls and vote for the ticket from the bottom of the ballot to the top.
Senator Cornyn sent out a message to everybody, I think recently too, saying very important for people not to be complacent in that going forward.
So they got to become real enthusiastic about a president that on national TV says we need to do something about taking guns away from people. Without
they don't like that, right? No, I agree. There's,
and now that I'm through with that, let me talk about raising tariffs.
Yes.
And
Jerry's sitting there going, I like both of those things. Jason, maybe I can support that. Well, remember, he was for most of his life he was a Democrat.
He was a Democrat. He's a New York Democrat.
Yes, remember even that. Or a New York Republican, which is the equivalent of a Democrat in Texas anyway.
Well, he's been casting his shadow across the landscape for quite some time now. And clearly a lot that goes on with underneath. You know, the fact that the Democrats are out there, almost every congressional race has somebody in it now.
Everyone in Texas.
Everyone in Texas, they're all thinking that there's a chance for this. Gene Green is another congressman who's really served admirably. Just one of the most likable guys.
You had him on your show a couple weeks ago.
I did indeed. Just one of the most likable guys. He's planning on taking his grandkids fishing and taking it and taking his wife out and having a good time. But in the meantime, there's a skirmish for that seat as well. Yes. Sylvia Garcia has, by all accounts, been looked upon as one of the leaders in that race, and the early voting numbers certainly belie that. Do you think there's a chance that there won't be in a runoff in this particular category?
A chance? Sure, there's a chance. In fact, the truth, I agree with that. 2 weeks ago, I never even...
She's been on the ballot how many times? I mean, you lost count.
So, look, back in 1992, I represented Benny Reyes in the election contest against Gene Green for that seat.
And the reason... Votes?
Well,
however many there was.
There had to be I'm talking about in the runoff. There had to be a new election in the runoff. The other candidate in that race at the time...
Reyes' son.
That's what I'm getting ready to get to. Yes. But the other candidate, of course, in that race was Sylvia Garcia.
Sylvia has run a lot.
So Sylvia was running for that seat back in 1992.
Was she was comptroller for the city?
Yes, correct.
Was she a city councilwoman?
No, but she was county commissioner.
She was county commissioner.
And she ran.
Then she decided to run for the Senate.
County attorney. And
this lady's got more government retirements than anybody I know.
Well, I don't know about that.
She's a nice lady.
And she is, and she's been very active national in the
she has.
And those kinds of things.
She is.
So but 2 weeks ago I saw.
So how bad can she be?
Yeah, well. 2 weeks ago, I did not see
troublemaker. You are a troublemaker.
2 weeks ago, I did not see any possibility that she could be in a runoff.
And I don't see it tonight.
Then the last week, it started to look like maybe that'll be so. The early vote seems to suggest
her name ID in the district should be off the charts compared to
they got, don't they have
3 Garcias?
Don't they have 3 Garcias on that race?
Yeah. Confuse the voters. And on the Republican side, it's going to be a runoff, but the leader is Philip Aronoff.
I know. Well, I've talked to him.
Long-time Republican, great guy.
I've talked to him about this race a couple of times, saying, if you're going to Michigan.
And what's his attribute? What makes him somebody who is, somebody who...
Well, he's an accomplished businessman, been active in politics forever.
And believes that Latinos are getting a bum deal. And I do think that he believes in his heart of hearts that that's true. And he wants to, and by the way, that they're getting a bum deal from the Republican Party. And he thinks that he can do something to make a difference in that regard. Yeah.
He'd be an interesting candidate. Policy wonk, conservative policy wonk.
And he's given money to several Democrats, by the way.
Over the years.
Over the years, yeah.
And in that district, that's not going to hurt him, is it?
Well, look, Sylvia's going to beat him, but I think he'll make it more of a contest than...
you never know. Anything's possible, right? Not probable, but possible.
Correct. I agree with that. I concur with that. But he's going to get blue waved. The problem he faces, amongst other things, if Obama was still in office, strangely enough, I think that Aronoff would have a shot at it. But with Trump in office, you're going to have this effect that we talked about before with the party, with the president. The first election is running into headwinds.
But if you take a look at what I believe will be the countywide ballot for Republicans versus Democrats this year, there are going to be more Hispanics on the countywide ballot for Republicans than there are Democrats, which is a significant change and difference that's coming. There are actually lots of Hispanic Republicans who are pro-faith, pro-family, pro-freedom.
And that has been a strategic. That's been strategic on behalf of the Republican Party in Harris County, has it not?
Well,
because clearly that has not been. The party has not been one to be known as the party of diversity.
Well, I can tell you that going back to, and you remember this, that when I got elected chairman in 1996, one of the first things I talked about is that our ticket ought to look like our county. And that we can find fine, and talking about judges, I said, and by the way, a lot of people didn't like what I said then, but I said there are lots of fine lawyers that are African Americans, that are Hispanic, that are Asian, that share our values and just need the opportunity to serve.
And leadership like Gary promoted that concept, but the voters in your primaries over the years
it was difficult.
But I was like, there's a much different Harris County now than it was then, though.
Right. I was out there early. I was early in that. But I could say
ahead of your time.
Well, I'm a chess player. I look 5 steps ahead. I said, look, the demographics are changing. You're not going to win elections if your party doesn't look like the county.
So it really wasn't that he had such concern for diversity.
No, I don't do it for diversity's sake. I think it's important that
identity politics.
It's important when you have let's say, and I do a lot of juvenile work, or I work in other courts. People go to court. They know there's African American judges, there's Hispanic judges, there's white judges, there's Asian judges. We have a variety. Anybody can do this.
It's incredibly important to the people who are the consumers of judicial services that they have a feeling that the judiciary does reflect the diversity of the county. And
talking about the judiciary, which is a very interesting comment. This is the last election in November where voters can vote straight ticket for judges in Texas. It's over. And then in the future, it's going to be, it'll be vote on individual races, which is fascinating. In fact, you'll be happy to know, Jerry, some of your Democratic friends who are incumbent judges who are up in 2020 have already started talking to me and said, well, do you think there's a possibility that we'll get some support from traditional Republicans, because I'm a good judge, I'm fair, and that's ought to be about it. You know what I say to that? They're right. They're right.
Sort of.
It ought to be.
Here's what.
So many times, though, we've seen that straight ticket or whatever.
Wipe out good judges.
Wipe out good judges. That's happened
for both parties. For both parties.
And so the first thing that I think we need to do is get rid of electing judges at all. In large counties such as Harris County, there are too many people for
the Phillips plan. The Phillips plan.
Well, I've got my own. It's been published previously in the Chronicle, but I do believe it should not be. It is impossible for voters to know enough information in a county as large as Harris with this many. What do we have? We have 83 judicial positions on the ballot in November. I mean that's ridiculous. Gary doesn't know who the good candidates are, and I don't.
A lot of them, but it's not everybody. But not everybody.
And the two of us are lawyers and political junkies, and if anybody,
I have an idea. We could create a new slate, Jerry. It could be ours together. We could do a slate.
We've talked
bipartisan. It would make sense.
I have breaking news. The Associated Press has called the governor's race for Governor Abbott. Just throwing that out there.
Well, that's a stunner. 90% of the vote. So the governor is well on his way to battle.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and the same thing for O'Rourke as well.
He didn't really have any serious opposition.
Correct.
and also Cruz, which is these are so Daniel back in the booth. I'm concerned about the fact this is something that always happens. It's 8:25 now.
Still waiting.
We still at 2%. You know,
Right.
Statewide, 2%.
No. He's talking about county in Harris County.
I mean, we're
2%.
We're just looking at these numbers here, and
I didn't see it.
it's always a challenge to be able to get this process going. And I don't quite understand why it takes so long.
Well, there are a couple.
Once they close at 7, and
They got to get this stuff down.
Whoa. First off, it doesn't really close at 7 because anybody in line at 7, right?
Okay.
And there were lines at 7.
Okay.
There will always be lines at 7
Because people come after work.
And also because they have to spend so doggone much time in the voting booth reading those silly propositions, 11 for you folks and 12 for mine. And
I still have 0.
yeah. So what happens is that the polls aren't really closing until 7:30, maybe even 8 o'clock. Now, from there, you've got to get them. You got to get them downtown to the counting centers from all over a very large geographical county for them to go into the counting equipment to be counted. Look. I remember, I don't know if you recall this one or not, one time back when we used to have punch card machines.
Absolutely.
Right? So, well, here's what happened. We had one night,
fun.
the law says that you have to announce the early vote before you can announce anything else.
Right.
And there were these big trays with all these punch cards that had been sorted by precinct. And as they were getting ready to put it in the counter, somebody slipped and dumped the whole tray onto the floor. And we had to go through
Oh my God.
tens of thousands of punch cards and put them back into precinct order so that they could be counted in the machines. We did not get the first results that night until 9:30, and the press was quite irate.
Yeah, well, as well they should be, because I'm an impatient guy. I figure once it closes, let's get it done. And that's not happening here tonight. So we'll continue to go ahead and look at what we have.
Until they put it online, which makes it hackable.
So having said that, when you look at early,
right.
We don't want that to happen.
Right.
We want it we're unhackable all the time. So when we have the early vote numbers here, unless we expect it to be a close race, and some of these races we know are already going to be close.
Yes.
But a lot of these numbers we're seeing now, when you have
Races
a 10%,
are over.
10%, we have a 10-point spread between Kathleen Wall and
that's probably
And
still too
Crenshaw's
close.
at 20, so he's not out of it. Everyone else is. This is a race between Roberts, Wall, and Crenshaw based on the early vote.
Okay.
Because remember, the day vote is not going to exceed it. So he's in the hunt. The rest of them, the next person after that's got 1,900 votes.
So those are the ones who, in this case in particular, when you talked about the fact that when you get to the early voting part, you have to sustain all the way up to the voting day.
Right, correct.
Well, Kathleen Wall's spots really went up. She started really having a lot more frequency.
When you repeat the same spot over and over again, people just tune out.
But in addition to that, there was a time that I thought one of the big mistakes that the Republicans made in the Harris County race about 4 years ago. They had a spot that they put up on TV, put a lot of money into the spot on TV. It was the judicial candidates. They ran it for the first time on the Friday, the last day of early voting. And by that time, all the votes were in the can.
That's crazy.
You know, yeah.
I did want to mention something else. You had talked about Ken Paxton, and you think he may have vulnerability. Here's an interesting statistic. In the Harris County early vote, Dan Patrick gets 67,766, and he had an opponent, obviously. Ken Paxton, unopposed, got 70,627. So I would expect to see an undervote under Paxton if the Republicans were really unhappy with him. But you don't see that there. That's interesting. Hager, he beat Hager by 2,000 votes. Hager's not controversial at all. So that's fascinating. You're not going to beat Ken Paxton by knocking them, having the Republicans desert him. You got Bush. You got Bush in a close race. He's got 51.
Yeah, what's going to happen there?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Depends on what's going on statewide. That's an interesting race. Patterson wants to return to a job he gave up to run for lieutenant governor. And in Bush, they've been hammering Bush on the Alamo. And I will say, you ought to have him on the show. Because when he came to meet me, I'd already heard the criticisms. So I said, okay, George P., here's where we're at. I need to hear your answer in 2 minutes or less on what's going on with the Alamo. Is the Alamo in danger? And he gave a great answer in 2 minutes of what they're trying to do, trying to restore it to what it was, opening up the area more so it looks more like it did at the time the Alamo battle took place. You ought to have him on. It was actually a good show. It was a good story. I said, well, you did it because I didn't think you could.
Well, when you see that number as an early voting number, that looks like it's over.
Yeah, he's moving up. That's statewide.
Is that Texas?
He is probably, that's looking, he's probably going to survive.
I agree.
And by the way, he really is a great guy, very personal.
He's somebody that
worries
me greatly.
Worries you greatly?
Yeah.
But let me tell you what we talked about.
Okay, wait.
The funny thing.
You say great guy, you say worries you greatly.
He worries. Oh, no, I'm talking about politically, as a Democrat. No, he's a young Bush Hispanic, Latino, and that's something that's going to be very troublesome. But this particular race, I think that what he really gets out of over not having to have a runoff is because his early support for Trump.
Right.
And I think that really...
Well, he was the head of the joint campaign for the state, for the Republican.
So that's what I was talking about in terms of the statewide. He has, the closer he can get to Trump, the better it is for him. His calculation in the primary.
Right.
You know, not his grandfather certainly didn't feel that way.
You know, but here's
neither did his dad. I mean, think about this. The fascinating thing about in my conversation with George P. When we talked about it, I said, you know, where our President Bush won 34. Both of them. But the interesting thing about this is where George P. is 42 and 44, but where Bush is today, George P. is, this is his show now. No, you know, the older generation's out of the picture. They're not running again, and he's going to make the Bush name for what it's going to be. And what his dad did, and what his uncle did, and what his grandfather did, is as we move further away from it, has less significance. And we talked about that, and I said, it's really on you, George P. You're going to make the name for yourself now. The Bush name was good for you when you ran the first time. You're able to raise a lot of money, but it has, that value is depreciating.
Does he have
depreciating, but not all that.
Look, now you can build it again.
Yeah, well, I know he's land commissioner running for re-election. If you sit there, I'm going to embarrass myself. I don't know who the Democratic candidates for land commissioner are.
He's not going to get beat. He's not going to get beat.
That tells you something.
Tells you a lot.
Invite him. You ought to bring him out and talk about the Alamo and stuff.
You'd be surprised how many invites I've made to different people who haven't come. You know, with our junior senator.
Unlike us, we come.
Our junior senator, who's from here, by the way, is not. He can't seem to get me on the schedule. I don't know what it is.
I will be happy to.
Years the invitation's been going out.
Happy to tell you who to reach.
Years. I've reached. Okay.
Actually. Count your blessings.
I know. No, you need to have him on the show.
No, absolutely. I want him to come on
and ask the questions you want to ask.
Absolutely. Now, because we're talking about,
you should have O'Rourke too.
Well, because we're getting into that category. It's going to be going to November. There's a reason to want to come on, newsmakers, and talk about it.
Absolutely.
Because this area has.
It's critical.
It's critical. Absolutely. Yeah. It's got to be able to do that. So.
Well, by the way, and I suspect Gary will agree with me here. Not only critical to his winning in November. What's going to happen nationally? Texas is right in the center of. Look, New York is going to vote for Democrats for president as far as the eye can see.
Right.
California is safely in the Democratic column. If you can start a presidential election cycle with New York, California, and Texas in your column,
it's pretty much over.
There's not an electoral map that you can draw that the Republicans can win. Now, how can Democrats win? How can Democrats win Texas? It has to be through Harris County. Until Democrats reliably and substantially win Harris County in races, including gubernatorial cycle races, we can't win the state of Texas. So Harris County is ground zero for any entrenched long-term Democratic.
Do you find others like you who are maybe, I'm not put words in your mouth, but are any Democrats optimistic about that happening?
Well, yes, but they're not Pollyanna about it. They don't. I have not met many Democrats who think that Texas is a laydown for Democrats. But I certainly believe that we're going to see a lot of money coming into Texas now. I mean, where else are they going to spend it? They don't need to spend it.
Well, they're going to be spending it all over the country. They're going to be spending money all over the country.
But Texas, I think. Texas, you'll remember, always has been a donor state. We've been the ones who've been.
No, I remember that. You know, the money disappear.
Correct. It leaves Texas and never comes back. This time we're going to start seeing it come back, and what the impact of that is going to be with the changing demographics, with the angst over the current president. So here's my statement, Gary. You won't like this. If the Democrats succeed in November 2018 of sweeping Harris County, and that is within the realm of possibility, but if they sweep Harris County, I think
Set meaning
win all the down ballot
countywide
races,
races,
okay, all the
countywide
judges, all the judicial
Countywide.
offices, everything
Countywide.
else. Yeah, that if we do that, the blue wave, right? The Hillary Clinton coattails, the CD7 enthusiasm, all of that comes together, and the Democrats win throughout Harris County. That could very well be a stake in the heart of the Republican Party in Harris County. It will be because 2 years later, 2 years later is a presidential cycle.
You know what I wrote?
We've done really well there.
But I want to
my newsletter. What I wrote, I said, if the Republicans lose Harris County, we're going to lose Texas, and when we lose Texas, we have lost the nation for a generation. That's what I wrote. So you and I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
But that's a big if, though.
No doubt about that.
It's going to be. I mean, I hope that the election is hotly contested by the Republicans this time, as opposed to the ineffectual campaign we had 2 years ago. You remember, our party never mentioned Donald Trump, never tried to reach out to blue-collar Democrats that Trump got around the country. Never mentioned a candidate, never had a picture of the diverse ticket we had. So where we were left, the most fascinating conversation post-election, the Democrats were saying, well, why did we win? And I asked a consultant, he says, well, we won because your party ran a lily white ticket. And I said, well, no, we didn't. And his response was, but nobody knew it. Think about that. That was the most significant, and you know what I said to that? I said, you're absolutely right.
You're correct.
You're right about that.
Breaking news. Dan Patrick declared a winner there as well. So that's not a shock. We shouldn't.
Only 76%. So he didn't do as well as the governor.
I will.
Governor,
well, there's some kind of. By the way, what is that 24%? That's some kind of a protest. What was
bathroom bill, maybe?
Well, this could be the speaker's allies around the state. Who don't like. Because Patrick and the speaker didn't necessarily get along all the time, and so it would be a protest.
But Scott Milner is not a.
He's a nobody.
I mean, exactly. A nobody who got 24% running against the incumbent lieutenant governor.
The lieutenant governor Collier wasn't winning early. Who was the better candidate for the Democrats?
No question.
I'm not worried that Dan Patrick's not going to work. He will work. There's no question.
No doubt about it.
So going back to something you said earlier, you said that during the last election, the Republicans didn't ever mention Trump and et cetera and so forth. Are you suggesting that they should have? Because remember, there was a lot of trepidation about the candidate they were getting, not understanding what they were going to get.
But he was your presidential candidate. So here's what happens. Whether you embrace him or not, you got him. You know, it's like you break it, you own it. Well, he was our candidate. So if you're representing the Republican Party, you need to support him. Okay.
But Ted Cruz wouldn't. Ted Cruz did not embrace him, and I think that complicated things.
But if you embrace Trump, the county would have been probably results would have been different. There wouldn't have been a Democratic sweep because there were blue-collar Democrats available to vote Republican, like they did around the country for Trump. But when you don't talk about Trump at all, what's the reason to do that? I mean, there is no reason. You know, these people don't. I mean, I like Trump, but these people don't even mention him. So I'm not going to vote for them.
But frankly, what you are forgetting is the energized Latino vote in 2016 that was angry over Trump's immigration policy. The fact of the matter is that Barack Obama had carried Harris County in 2008 and in 2012. And as a result of that, in 2016, we had a lot of incumbents, and the advantages of incumbency were part of the dynamic.
I had another breaking news. Daniel, repeat that to me. You said railroad commissioner. Okay, Christy Craddock has been declared a winner as well.
Okay.
And Pete Olson has been declared in 22 in Sugar Land.
Nice fellow.
As the winner
Republican
as well.
There's
a lot. There are several people.
Only 80%. Danny Nguyen spent a lot of money toward the end.
Yeah, everywhere I went, I saw those. I saw a lot of signs and a lot of shirts with Danny Nguyen.
He had a lot of enthusiasm, but Olson is strong. But Nguyen can run in the future, may have a shot.
Now, you know, earlier there was the speculation about Troy Nehls thinking about running for that. Did you hear anything about that? You didn't hear anything about that? Okay, so that was just scuttlebutt that was just out
There's a lot of people that think they want to run for Congress. You know the thing that I used to do, maybe you did the same thing. People come see us, I want to run for Congress. I would tell them, you need to. I will set you up. You can spend a day with a congressman in Washington. I want you to see what that life's about.
I never did that.
And because I wanted people to make sure they wanted it. And then I showed them the divorce rate for congressmen, which is like off the charts. And
I wasn't even aware of that.
No. And I said, then you got to decide if this is what you want to do, and then your wife has got to.
Is that because of the sacrifice, or is that because of the
because the wives stay home, and there's
okay.
So you have the highs and lows, and there's that's what happens. But it's a tough job, and you got in here. You got if you're living on the East Coast, it's easier. Here, you got a 3.5 hour.
Right.
7-hour commute every weekend because you got to come back from
That's part of the reason why Gene Green said, okay, I've done it. I've done
it's
it.
Tough.
And Mrs. Cornyn is with Senator Cornyn all the time. When he comes home, she's there.
She's there. She comes everywhere.
Everywhere. And so because that's part of that family.
And that's important to keep your family together.
And when Sheila Jackson Lee beat Craig Washington, I think it was 92, wasn't it? 92, 94. 94, it was in 94. He hated to fly.
No, Craig hated Congress.
Well,
hated it.
But what he hated even worse than that was flying.
Yeah,
he hated to fly.
He hated that.
And
too.
so, well,
but he was a terrific. He was a terrific state
on the
senator.
other hand,
he loved that job.
And he was great.
He was a great state senator.
He really was.
But Congress, not so much.
He hated Congress.
Well, yeah.
It's so hard to get anything done.
He did enjoy playing golf with Clinton.
He did like that. Craig's a great guy.
Absolutely.
Let's look at
terrific advocate before a jury, by the way.
He's an awesome guy.
I want to look, Daniel, if you can pull up State House 27 and find out what's going on with the early vote for Ron Reynolds.
Oh.
No, yeah.
Down in Fort Bend County.
Okay. Joan Huffman just won that. That was she was spending a lot of money here this past go round too.
She did spend a lot of money. What percent of the vote is that? Do we know?
1% still. I mean, that's what it shows up at the top. So
yeah,
that's not an issue there going.
Spent a lot of money, and there was and Abbott endorsed her too enthusiastically.
Right, and part of that conservative wave, and she was very active out there talking about the things she had been able to do, and was a big proponent of what was going on in the city of Houston.
Yeah,
helping to do that.
She got. I was on the opposite of that position with her because I didn't think it was a good deal for the city, and of course, and she engendered a lot of issues with firemen who were not happy with the position she took. But she's good. She's a conscientious state senator. Firefighters. She's conscientious state senator. She works hard. She's probably forgotten more about criminal justice than most state senators.
Right.
And she likes the job.
The problem is she started forgetting that when she was on the bench.
Well, now she remembers it all.
So, Jerry, question for you. Ron Reynolds' seat. It is something. It's kind of unique, is it not? When you have a candidate who is an
on his way to
and has been convicted, and I think he's out of appeals, is he not?
He got sentenced, he got jail time?
Yeah.
How much?
I think a year.
Can he serve in the legislature from jail?
No.
No, okay.
So then that becomes an issue going forward. I mean, there's not been any, I've never seen anything that says, okay, I'm not going to run, I'm going to step down.
Oh, no, he's running. He's running.
Right.
He's on the ballot.
He's on the ballot.
Absolutely. So the question is, number one, how's he doing? We'll get those numbers up here shortly.
I'm interested.
And
he had
there you go, 69, 39.
Wilvin Carter, I think, was the serious opponent.
And so that's a pretty big number for somebody, and then everybody there knows what his situation is.
Absolutely,
I don't know that all voters know that. I think.
Actually,
stretch.
No, actually they do. They do.
They don't care.
So Fort Bend County is a really unfortunate situation for the Democratic organization. There are two camps there. And the one camp supports Ron Reynolds and the other camp doesn't. And they are spreading the word about him. They have. So, no, it's no secret to anybody.
So if he goes to jail, they'll have to have a special election. Is there a Republican? Wait a minute. Is there a Republican running? This is interesting, Jerry. Now, this is interesting. If there is a Republican running and Reynolds becomes ineligible to be on the ballot.
He'll be eligible to be on the ballot. And it is the House that has to determine.
Oh, the House has to boot him? Because otherwise Republicans could get it by default.
Yeah.
Well, that whole
but I don't even think, is there a Republican on that ballot?
I have no idea.
I don't either.
There is. There is.
Is there?
There is. And so they're set up, this is Michael Cloud and Beck Braun.
Oh, there you go.
40 to 31%.
Well, they're even going to have a runoff on that.
Yeah, well, one of them might be able to win.
No, wait. That was
27.
House. That was 27 House.
Yeah, that was 27.
US House of Representatives.
Yeah, that's what we're looking.
So I don't know what to tell you about that one in Fort Bend County.
Well, I thought I'd ask you since, you know,
yeah,
you're a Democrat, so what was going on there for those guys. So the problems today as far as voting is concerned, have either of you heard any issues that would be of concern?
I heard that there were some problems this morning is because some of the election workers for Republicans, I think primarily, decided to show up in the morning to set up and test. Normally the responsible election workers show up the night before, set up the equipment, test it, go home, and then show up to be there to open at 7. But these folks showed up this morning at like quarter to 7, and then they weren't ready to go when the people showed up at 7. So that was probably problems with the Republican Party recruiting people that weren't serious about doing the work.
And so this is a little bit in the, no, it's in the weeds.
It's definitely in the weeds.
Here's an in the weeds issue.
We have time
that both
for weeds because we're still waiting for returns.
That happens to both. Here's the question: who should be running the elections? And there are two possibilities. One of them is experienced election judges who have done it before, who know how to set up the machinery, who know how to use the machinery, and know how to process. Or professionals at $8 an hour, or precinct chairs. Precinct chairs are not necessarily election judges, so there is some confusion about that. The pushback that we got in the Democratic Party was the precinct chair said, look, if we ran, we were elected, we ought to have at least the first option to be the election judges. Right. And my view is the precinct chairs ought to be on election day, they ought to be turning out the vote. They ought to be out knocking doors and making phone calls. They don't need to be running the elections if they don't know how to run. But I've been outvoted on that, and the result is that precinct chairs at least get the first option to run them, and they're not necessarily the most qualified to set up the equipment, to operate the equipment, to show up at 6:30 in the morning. We had a couple that didn't as well. But the other problem is the one I think I discussed or mentioned earlier, and that is the equipment didn't all function properly. Now, one of the things
you had talked about the equipment being
one of the things that happened also was that the county went to a new, instead of using paper books that tell you who's registered to vote or not, they have these iPads that will tell you this now, and this was the first time that they used, it's called e-books. This is the first time they used the e-books, and the problem was that there was not sufficient familiarity with it, and some of them were malfunctioning, and they weren't working properly. And the technicians who come out there, unfortunately, aren't really capable of fixing things. But look, let's give them a break. This is seasonal work. You know, the people who work on election machinery get to do it for 2 times a year, every second year. You don't find somebody working.
It's not a full-time job.
Right. You don't find people fixing election machines in June. And as a result of that, the people that get sent out arrive late because it's such a long distance to go, and they don't really know how to deal with this particular equipment, particularly the older equipment. So all of that did lead to us having significant problems early in the morning with machines that weren't working, weren't functioning, and therefore the polls didn't open.
And there were different polls for some people because of Hurricane Harvey, were there not? I mean, the locations would change, and so even with that, a lot of people were able to get to the polls and find.
I didn't hear that there was a big problem.
I didn't hear that there were problems with that.
That part of it, there were some problems that some of the locations had to be changed, but not major problems there. Here's what happens, however. In the general election, we will have maybe 850 or so voting locations, and they're shared by both parties because you don't go to vote as a Democrat or Republican. Right. In the primary, you have 400 for the Democrats and 400 for the Republicans, and we don't share those locations because of what did happen. You go to a voting location in the few places that were shared, and you end up with fights between the Democrats and the Republicans, and vote here, vote there. And so neither party wants to share a voting location. So what that means is those 400 voting locations that Democrats have are not the same as those people go to for the general election.
That gets confusing.
That gets very confusing, and people show up at the wrong place.
Hey, I want to do something here, and Daniel, listen up in our control room, Daniel Brown, who is equal credit with me this evening. Because people may be coming in and out of our stream or whatnot, they may have missed some of our conversations early on. Why don't we put the numbers up from the top to the bottom and just go through them, and we'll talk about them when we put them up, comment them on as we put them up, and as we see the numbers. Maybe we'll get some updated numbers here in the meantime. But as you get starting with the governor, go down, and we'll go through some of those House districts as well. We'll follow you, sir. So as you put them up, we'll go.
You're complaining to think what the candidates are going through right now.
Oh, I imagine.
Oh, it's a lot worse for them.
Oh, yeah. They're sitting there at their places going, what the heck? Why are the numbers coming up? No shock here. Governor Abbott with more than $41 million in the bank now. Didn't spend it all. Here's the Democratic primary, though. Lupe Valdez. We're talking about the fact that this is definitely
probably headed to a runoff.
Yeah, and they have a number of people running. What, 9 people running for that? Most people nobody knows.
Only 2 of them are people.
And some people aren't real. Is that what we're saying? Okay.
43 to 31%. So that's probably going to be that. And we talked about this that Dan Patrick, as the incumbent lieutenant governor, getting 76%. To 24% for someone who
nobody knows.
As you said, quote unquote, nobody knows. It's
but he got 24%.
Gary Pollan. I know. I want to make sure that people know that's
nice
from Gary.
Number.
It's a protest vote. That's not a for Scott. It's against Dan.
Associated Press declaring lieutenant governor.
And it's fair to say Dan is people love him or they don't.
Yeah.
It's not. There's not a lot of neutrality with him because he's very passionate about his beliefs.
Democratic primary, you know much about these gentlemen?
Mike Collier's a good candidate, well-qualified candidate. There's name confusion because they're both named Mike. Earlier in the evening, Cooper was ahead. It looks like Collier has pulled ahead. Collier will unquestionably be the stronger candidate.
He's run before.
Yes, he has run before, but he ran for state controller, I think, the last time.
Right.
He actually believes that he can do something in the lieutenant governor's race. I think that's a very challenging race for him.
We are seeing 5% reporting now as opposed to the 1% earlier, so that means that some of those numbers are coming in now from today's voting as well. House of Reps, John Culberson with 77%. And that's still a 1% reporting. So I think the state numbers are going to be that higher number, apparently, because of local numbers here. So.
No, I don't. These still nothing in the election.
And this is the one where those who are competing to run against John Culberson, Lizzie Fletcher against Laura Moser, and there are others who are really right near her, near Laura Moser, 31%, and Laura Moser was the one who the Democratic, what do you call that committee? Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee
sound like you're
running opposition research or something like that against.
Call it, we insiders call it DCCC.
DCCC. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to make it sound like I'm a Democrat.
No, you're a reporter.
I know, which is kind of strange because I don't vote in these primaries because that means I have to declare myself a Republican or a Democrat, and I don't want to do that either way.
One of the advantages of being the chair of the primary committee is I couldn't endorse anybody.
Okay.
And that's a good thing because I don't have to write checks.
We're looking at the House of Representatives. This is District 2, and this is, of course, Congressman Poe's seat.
Yes.
And you saw all the money that Kathleen Wall was spending and was endorsed by Governor Abbott, and then Kevin Roberts, state rep, is there as well. Dan Crenshaw there, the Navy SEAL, Harvard grad.
He's got a shot.
Looks like he's got a shot to make it in there. And wouldn't that be an upset if Dan Crenshaw gets and beats Kathleen Wall for a runoff?
Be a big upset.
Yes. That would be a huge upset because he spent nowhere close to that kind of money. No. And she's self-financed at this point, so that would be a tremendous upset. And Rick Walker, of course, who was
Trump didn't spend that kind of money. Trump didn't spend that kind of money.
Maybe not. House of Reps, this is the Democratic primary here. It looks like Todd Litton, you said this early on that was going to be the case there, that quite a bit ahead of the Democrat there. And these are all still early voting numbers. We don't have any of the later numbers, and this is not a product of what's going on here at Channel 2.
Not our fault.
The product was what's going on at the campaign, the clerk's office. And so
this race is over.
House 134.
Why is there a red check mark there?
Yeah, I don't know. That's I think
she'll be the nominee, and that is going to be against Sarah Davis or Susan Dokupil.
Okay, and Lloyd Walber, his name has been around for a long time.
Yeah,
on both for district attorney for the Democrats.
Wait, what did he run as a Republican?
I don't remember, but he ran mostly Democrat. He runs all the time.
Well, he's barely breaking 1,000 votes in that thing, so maybe it's time to maybe not run.
Anyway, the word's out.
Dan, but I take my hat off to anybody who wants to put their name out there and try to run. It takes an awful lot to do that. Lieutenant Governor.
The Rockets are winning too, so that's
good. Updates.
What's
for
important.
Lieutenant Governor declared a winner, and Philip Aronoff in the Republican primary for District 29.
He's probably headed to a runoff, but he's going to be tough to beat. He'll be the nominee.
You think it's going to be a runoff?
Well, he's at 45.
Well, look, right now it's 45-21. So that's on the cusp. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, oddly enough, Philip would probably be better off if he is in a runoff. That's he doesn't
because
have,
he builds his name ID.
Builds his name ID, and also it trains him to be a better candidate.
Yeah, that's probably true. Jerry likes him, you know.
Okay,
he's a nice guy.
As we look at that, Dan, say that again in my ear. I'll repeat what you just said. The Republican Party is having a precinct convention after the.
Yes, the Oh, that's right. We have precinct conventions.
What does that mean? And you're responsible for this holdup.
No.
No, but that's what they're saying.
Precinct convention is.
Harris County is saying that that's part of the holdup.
Well, the precinct conventions are held at the location of the primary after the primary ends.
But that has nothing to do. The votes should have gone by now, right?
Except that it's normally the precinct chairman is the election judge. They run the precinct meeting where you elect delegates to go to the senatorial conventions, ultimately to the state convention.
They're supposed to tear down the equipment first. Then they're supposed to send the vote. I forgot what they call that, to the central counting station before they hold their precinct.
But they hold the precinct conventions first.
But they do it first, and that's bad. Well, you remember
they don't take that long.
In 2008,
like
we had that
minutes.
problem.
This is your people's fault. I'm just saying.
We had the Texas two-step in 2008.
I remember that. Oh, yeah, that was really bad.
Right. That's when we were having precinct conventions going on until 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Democratic Party said, we're not going to do that anymore, and we've moved our precinct conventions to the state senatorial district conventions, and they're held simultaneously.
But you got to get elected.
Daniel, I don't. Wherever you were, the last slide,
Democrats, everybody
put that back up.
That's right.
So now we're looking at the General Land Office here, and this looks like George P. Bush is doing well. Jerry Patterson, who wanted that job
7%
back,
reporting.
that's not very much, and so there's a big gap there. It doesn't look like that's going to be able to.
Probably not going to change.
Yeah,
I think Bush will be on his way to renomination.
Land Office, Democratic primary, Miguel Suazo, 70%. Looks like he is going to win that one, of course, statewide. So if you voted, you know that that's
cannon fodder for George P. Bush.
Well, in this state that hasn't put a Democrat in quite some time, you're probably right about that. Christy Craddock, we know, got the nod there for the Railroad Commissioner for the Republican primary, so we're getting those numbers in, even without having only 7% statewide for that. And then Pete Olson down in District 22, which is the home of the Velvet Hammer.
And NASA.
Huh? Yeah,
no,
NASA.
Right, that's true.
That's true. That's true. But I remember our back in the Clinton, when President Clinton was there.
I mean, he's obviously going to win decisively, but without the Harris County vote in yet, the Harris County vote is what percent at 22?
Not much.
I thought it was like
they redistricted it mostly out of Harris County.
Okay.
Joan Huffman,
75%, and not a big shock there because of been very active.
But her opponent
that also
spent
has
money.
a big component, about almost 40% in Harris County.
Her opponent spent significant money, raised a lot of money.
And Ron Reynolds as well, with only that 1% voting. So that's at 61% though. He was on Facebook, he put some things out on Facebook saying, you know, his candidate was saying negative things about him, but he wasn't going to go there. He wasn't going to go a negative.
What was he going to say? That Wilvin Carter is going to jail?
Yeah.
Is that what he's going to say? No, he can't say that.
I mean, if Wilvin Carter talks about the fact that his opponent has been convicted and going, man, that's not necessarily
going to jail. That's not negative. It's fact.
Yeah, it's fact. So it makes a real big impact there. So going forward, by the way, Mike McCall has been declared the winner as well for House 10. That's not really a shock there because of his prominent role in a lot of things that are going on within the Republican Congress.
Is he still the wealthiest member of Congress?
Maybe.
I think
he's chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the House. That's a big job.
And this is in that Democratic primary, Mike Siegel, Tawana Walter Caden. She's run a number of times, I think. I remember her name as running several times before.
Well, she's going to have to run several more times before
not doing well now against Mike Siegel.
Democrats aren't spending any money there.
And that, of course, is going to be a real uphill battle in that area. because of that. So yeah, Randy Weber in District 14 also doing substantially
That's the old
better.
Ron Paul seat.
Although, by the way, going back to 10, a very strong Democrat, if there were such a thing in that district, because it's this barbell-shaped thing, could run a formidable race. The demographics of that.
Where Mike Siegel now is in the lead now?
Yes, correct.
District 10?
But I don't think that he's sufficiently.
That's not happening this year.
That means when you say that, you mean financed.
That's not going to happen this year.
Finance and
yes.
other things.
If you look at the target opportunities for the Democrats around the country, that's not in the top 100.
That's correct.
I'm going to look at
Well, and they've talked about the fact that in order for them to do well, their goal is to get 5 House seats and 10 State House seats here in the state.
Right.
And how likely is that? I mean, you're talking about 10, and of course down Will Hurd in the southern part of the state, they look at as being very likely they can flip that, although
he's tough.
He was just called. I know he has.
He's been very.
He's been very formidable. He's won his primary, by the way, which is not a shock.
I think he's done some really interesting things to.
Yeah, he worked. He's a smart guy.
Yeah.
And he also seems to not be rabid left or right.
Correct.
He is a moderate Republican.
I think that's probably
in
true.
that district. That's what I would call it, based upon what he's saying.
That's correct.
So
But I think he would have to be in that district.
Yeah.
I think he'll be tough to beat.
Yeah,
but it will be a target race.
They will target it just because
that is one that will
they
be
had
targeted
it at one time.
Well, that's one of them. If they're going to have 5 House seats, that's got to be one of them.
That's got to be one of them. 7's got to be one of them. 10's got to be one of them.
Maybe the Dallas seats. Dallas seats.
And then, I don't know what's up in Dallas. I haven't been following that.
So we're continuing with the
seat.
House of Representatives here, the Democratic primary in 14 against Randy Weber. Adrian Bell, Democrat there, also 75% there. There's no check mark by that, but one could put a check mark by that at this point with 75%. Not a shock at all here. That Congresswoman Jackson Lee is declared the winner in that. I think she's running unopposed. Is she?
No, Richard Johnson is.
No. I mean, Republican.
Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I didn't see.
I mean, that's one that they stack with. Every Democrat they can find, they stick in the 18th congressional district.
You know, I had while we talk about Congresswoman Jackson Lee for a second, I had Congressman Culberson in one day. I had Congressman Brady in one day. And each of them happened to, I think I had them on at the same time with Congresswoman Jackson Lee at some point in time, which means there wasn't much oxygen left in the room at that point in time among all of those folks. But they both made the comment that said she is one of the hardest working people. She is everywhere for her folk. I mean, so that's, and they just said, look, we don't agree or not agree. We don't agree or not agree that
she works hard. She
works really hard out there. So she's doing that, and she's going to be in for this district again going forward.
You're not dead until Sheila's been to your funeral.
There you go. That's true.
You guys,
the cameraman's loving it.
Hey, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, just in case you're watching, that's my guest
and she is the hardest working member of Congress.
She works
still
hard.
does.
She does.
Let's keep looking at the numbers we have as we have them. This is District 22, which was one of the Democratic primary there. Letitia Plummer with 23% down there against Pete Olson, ultimately, who might be able to run. There may be a runoff. There are several others there running, 5 Democrats running.
They will not be targeted. That will not be a targeted Democratic race.
No, I don't think so as well. But Texas comptroller race for the Democratic primary is pretty close at this point. Do you know much about these candidates?
I know that the Chronicle endorsed Chevalier. And that's about all I know about her.
Hager will be reelected in November.
Yeah. Well, it's an uphill battle, as we know. Now here we go.
This is an interesting
Sid Miller.
race.
It is an interesting
race.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Now the story here. Sid Miller was the conservative, Trump considered him for agriculture secretary, and he had an opponent. One of the opponents in the race, which I guess is running third now, who has just beat the living hell out of him in terms of attacking him, saying all these nasty things about Sid. But Sid,
none of which were untrue, by the way.
Well, Sid did give whatever.
Had some ethics issues.
Oh.
Accusations.
Accusations. He gave bonuses to employees. He wanted more from the legislature. He didn't get it, so he adjusted fees so he would have the money he needed. And of course, that's a Republican way to do it.
Treatment, a health treatment.
Wait. Oh, stop. That's a Republican way to do it, as opposed to the
Democrats like taxes, Republicans like fees. That's like that's the lane that my Democratic friends use.
Okay.
They said there's no difference. It's just what you pay one way or another.
So obviously, no matter what he's done, he is still obviously doing.
People
pretty well.
like him. You know, he's a cowboy agriculture commissioner.
Right.
And he is very and he's another great guest too.
And he is
really
also
personable.
But he's put himself very, very close to Trump. He
very close. To Trump. During the election.
He tried to get a cabinet appointment.
But by the way, you said something earlier that I kind of let go here for a moment. You said polls you saw had Trump at 50%.
Yes. The new Rasmussen poll has his popularity at 50%.
And that's Rasmussen.
Okay.
Yeah, well, they picked the election. They're pretty accurate.
Well,
yeah, I haven't. And the
which was around what Obama's was at the same time.
And the unpopular,
48.
48.
Oh
okay.
Yeah. But Obama had the same issue. His numbers were pretty close.
And so what happened to Obama in 2010?
There was a flip.
Yeah, it was a flip, and then he won re-election, and that's probably that could happen to us.
Right, but
the reactions, because it's interesting. The voters is kind of like they react. Okay, we don't like this. We're going to do this. They say, okay, we don't like this. There's too much excess from them, so we're going to re-elect this guy to run it.
If we're talking about 2018 right now, then
well, no, I think if you look at history. If you look at history, off-year elections for the White House generally are not good. It's not always true, but it generally is. So that means you got a lot of work to do to try to avoid that.
Now, a lot that happens in the White House trickles down, obviously. A lot of the candidates the Republican candidates are tying themselves closely to Trump as they can, especially for the primary, because they know that the ideologues are going to be the ones who are out there, the ones who are really out there. So much is going on in the White House. We get another, Cohn,
he's resigned.
Resigned today.
Right.
And there's such a revolving door. President Trump said, "Hey, people come and people go." He's kind of not a big deal to him, but there are more people who've left.
That's what happened.
Out of this White House within a little bit more than a year.
Well, here's the interesting question, and I think for Republicans, the thing that would work best for us is to localize the election. Harris County, state of Texas, as opposed to appealing and making it a nationalized election. If it's a nationalized election, then we got problems. I think there's no question about that, because it's so divisive. But when you get into Texas and things going on in Texas, we have some issues that divide us, but there are a lot of issues we agree on. So to the extent we can localize it, the better off we're going to be. Now, of course, the Democrats are going to endeavor to nationalize it.
That's right.
And that's the battle.
And by the way,
what it's about.
That ain't going to be, you said, they're going to endeavor. That ain't such an effort.
No. They're already on their way to doing that, but that doesn't mean we can't change the focus of the voters.
One of the things that has happened throughout all of this that I've noticed is that as the media covers this, and it's almost like the ringing bell. You go for that shiny object, and there's a lot of shiny objects being flashed. There's a lot of this stuff going on in the White House. In the meantime, quietly, many things are being done that conservatives like.
Yes.
From under this president. There's not
You've
not
got
being
too
covered.
many minis in that mini.
No, it's true.
They say, well, mini. So you got your tax hike bill done.
True.
Tax cut.
Tax cut for the corporations and the upper crust.
Economy.
But wait a minute.
Did you get your bonus?
It is a tax hike for folks at least in 2026. By definition, I mean,
but the Democrats, since it's popular now, the Democrats are already ready to vote.
Doesn't matter. All right, without going through. You got that. That is one thing that they accomplished. The other thing they've accomplished, they claim to have accomplished, cutting government regulations.
Yeah.
The problem. Tell me one that's affected your life. One regulation's been cut that affects your life.
I'm sure a lot of them. I just don't study it every day.
Nor does anybody. By the way, nor does anybody else. And part of the reason for that is exactly the same answer I've gotten from everybody I've asked that question.
The economy's
they think that there's all these regulations have been cut, and all these regulations were so
judges.
Yeah, but well, judges, that's one. You can count
Huge.
judges, absolutely.
That was one of my minis.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, if you're talking judges, I'll acknowledge.
Well, and see, a lot of people don't think about that either, but that really affects them.
No doubt.
And they're going to find out in many ways that that's going to affect them. And while the shiny objects have been chased by all these people leaving and Hope Hicks and all these other that stuff that's going on, the Mueller investigation, which, by the way, the Mueller investigation, I don't know how you guys view that, but it is a legitimate investigation that may bear some sort of result that could be problematic for not only one administration but the country, depending on what comes out of it.
I agree, but I'm one of these.
You know what's coming? A second special counsel is coming to investigate Obama and the Democrats.
All right, let it happen.
So
I'm okay with that. I don't think that, but let it happen.
We shouldn't have had a special counsel.
Well, I don't agree with that either.
But I will say this: the biggest determinant nationally, come November or in October, when people start early voting, is the economy. If the economy is still good and thought to be growing, that will help Trump and the Republicans. However, you know, there's no guarantees, and we could come in. We could have,
and also how you measure the economy.
Well, and jobless rates down. But if we're doing better than we are now, that will help Republicans.
But that's what I'm saying.
If we have a recession that's coming and looks like it's coming in the fall, that will hurt Republicans.
And what will a trade war do to that? And especially in the local economy, where we have the port and we have the oil and gas industry.
About that. The other thing too is people got bonuses. That bonus is gone. Now what happens? The other thing is that I've noticed as well is that most of the companies.
Did you get a bonus? I didn't get a bonus.
I work for free. My general manager is really tough. I got to tell you. So, but I've noticed that too. A lot of the companies have talked about that the money that they've been able to use has not been going to salaries across the board, but to investors, to putting it back and making so the dividend
helps your 401k.
Well, see, but I'm in that category of a person who I have a 401k. I've got savings and that sort of thing. But there are a lot of people who aren't going to feel.
But it's down since the tax bill passed.
I'm sorry?
It's your 401k is down.
The market.
Yeah, the market's down since the tax bill passed.
That's true.
The point is that most people, you hear these statements, oh, we've cut all these regulations. Find out what regulation got cut that helped you. It's not really. There are some out there, by the way.
It is helpful.
There's some environmental regulations.
I think it's helped the economy. Anecdotally.
So we have about 5 minutes left for our little fun fest here. But
let's
talk to
other returns.
Maybe we do. Let's go. I want to look at State House 139 and see how Adrian Garcia is doing in commissioner race. If we have those numbers, you can put those up. And I want to see how the Harris County GOP chair is doing, how Paul Simpson is doing
race.
in that thing. Right. Here's Jarvis Johnson, against Randy Bates. This is Mayor Turner's former seat. So
newsflash, we actually do have some election results from Harris County now.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, right as we're finishing up here. Jarvis Johnson 59-41. You can put something else up there until Jerry can give me the numbers he's talking about here. But 59 to 41%. Randy, this is the second time he's run for that spot, and Jarvis, of course, former city council, is in that position. Allison Sawyer, by the way, has been declared the winner in the 134 race.
Somebody's really out there.
That was pretty easy to declare against Lloyd Oliver, who 715 votes at this point in time. And so the District 27 the primary there, Raul Barrera, 35%, Ronnie McDonald, 28% in 27. And for the Republican primary, Michael Cloud, 38 to 32%. So these numbers go up. Of the races that are out there, which ones to you, gentlemen?
It looks like wow. It looks like Lizzie Fletcher is definitely going to be in the runoff. But there's a real close contest between Jason Weston and Laura Moser for the second place. Laura Moser right now is ahead, but she's only ahead by 400 or 500 votes.
District 7 we're talking about here.
Yeah,
so,
and that's still with relatively small returns, but at least they're returns.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Stannard. You gave us something to talk about. We've got 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Sarah Davis and Susan Dokapil, with 3.75% of the precincts reporting. Davis is up at 53 and Dokapil's at 46. It looks like there's about a 600 vote difference. That can be overcome. So that's too close to call. That's still an interesting.
And Andrew White is doing very well in Harris County now, which means that he may, what we saw, well, not only that, but Andrew White, I'm talking about,
yes,
the governor.
Yes.
He may overtake Lupe Valdez. There's going to be a runoff. That's
interesting Court of Appeals race between Terry Yates and Katie Boatman, and that's like neck and neck. They're separated at this point in Harris County. This is a 10-county race by 35 votes.
And so, but here's the governor race there with 10% reporting. Is that different what your number has?
That's statewide.
Yeah, statewide number there, 29.
Yeah, no, yes, I was talking about Harris County. Oh, yeah, he's, Mr. White's at 59%, I think, in Harris County right now. So as more Harris County comes in, the numbers you're seeing there are going to change.
I'm not sure
here's an interesting race, Cambrell, you'd like. District Judge, 263rd District, Charles Johnson, retired NFL pro football player, African-American Republican, strong conservative, has got 58.5% against Justin Kiter, who's a former assistant district attorney. He's going to win that primary. Significant.
Okay.
Here's another interesting race for a State House District 133, where Sam Texas is running.
Another perennial candidate.
But there are 3 people in that race, and as a result of Sam Tejas being in that race, it looks like it's going to be a runoff.
Oh, wow.
I have another one for you. The 257th Judicial District Court. This is Melanie Flowers. You may know
Melanie.
her,
yes.
Versus Alyssa Lemkule, who's a former Governor Abbott appointee. And Melanie's leading with 64.4% of the vote. She's up by over 20,000 votes. That race is over. Again, African-American woman. So the significance of this is that the Republican Party is diverse.
Finally,
can I get away with what the lies the Democrats said? We have outstanding minority candidates who are winning in our primary, contested primaries.
I love you, Gary. I love, you're my man. But when you say a statement like that, it can't, these couple of judges doesn't make the whole party diverse. It's starting to do things that you've suggested it should do a long time ago.
And it's a little bit locally,
I was ahead of my time.
So locally.
But and important, and you agree with me.
Yeah, I do.
All right, then another interesting race. Come on.
But we got 30 seconds.
I know. County Criminal Court number 8, Jay Carahan. Long-time incumbent, he got wiped out. His opponent, Dan Simmons, got almost 70%.
Oh, I wish we could have had a chance to talk about that.
He was controversial because he
the only reason
marriages.
he did gay marriages.
He did straight marriages too when he was supposed to be working for the county. People didn't like it. So that's the way it goes.
Well, I was hoping we'd have more numbers that we would be able to look at here while we were on.
We come back Thursday and finish this.
Scott.
It's time to do that again. So
Dollinger against Fred Cook is 50.5%, 49%.
Wow.
And which race is that?
That's a civil district court judge race.
Well, we've been looking at the numbers. We've given you the numbers as up to date as we could give you those numbers up to this point, and we're going to have more. Obviously, by the time we get to 10 o'clock, we'll have some more information about what's going on with the results. Certainly, you can track the results here on the web page. We'll continue to put them up on a regular basis here. Be sure to tune in to Channel 2 News at 10. We'll give you all the updated election results as well. I want to thank Gary Paulin and Jerry Bernberg for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Very insightful. I always love your knowledge. You know all the ins and outs, all the stories, and you've given up some of them here tonight, too.
It's like an exclusive, right?
I know. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I appreciate you.
Bet.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Updated results coming up at 10 o'clock. Good night.
Now here's